It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I'll be your host this morning. I'd like to thank you for joining with us. If you're catching us live on our streaming site, it's great news. Always happy to have you. We stream in both audio and video, for those of you that want to watch my ugly mug. But if you want to just audio feed only, you can catch that live on americasvoicenow.org every morning. In addition to that, you can also catch us live on patriotfb.com. Patriot FB is an outstanding site that I encourage you to participate with. It's awesome group of folks over there. It's kind of like a Facebook for patriots. No trolls, no nonsense, no censorship, no monitoring, none of that. So our show streams live there every day. The cool part is there's also some awesome hosts on there who are of similar, concepts about, or genre, I should say, about patriotic issues. I stream there from 8 to 10 in the morning. From 10 to 11, Resurrect the Republic with Tom is on. Tom Lacavara is on. After that, there's some music from 11 until 2. Then J.J. McCartney comes on from 2 to 4. There's a little bit more music there between 4 and 9, and you can listen to that at Patriot Radio. And then at 8 o'clock is Cowboy Logic, and Cowboy Logic is on Tuesdays only. And then 9 to midnight is the Midnight Patriot. And those are excellent shows, folks. I strongly encourage you. If you want a great place where you can just listen to radio and hear alternative media guests, Patriot FB is the place to go. You can also just listen to Patriot Radio by going to patriotfb.com/radio. And you can hear the entire 24-hour segment run, and that includes both the radio programming as well as the music in between. So please take advantage of that and make sure that you get over to Patriot FB. Recently did a massive server upgrade, and the site is running fast and flawlessly, and encourage you to go there and meet other folks that are of similar mindset as you. We're going to talk about 4 different issues this morning, but we're going to have you joined in our second and third segments, and possibly our last segment, by Doreen Hannes. Now, for those of you who are recently new to the show, Doreen Hannes and I have worked together for a couple of years now on different various issues. Doreen is she is brilliant with the level of knowledge and information that she has. She has 2 different blogs out there that she works on. Her own blog, which is called truthfarmer.com, and I strongly encourage you to go over there and not only read that, but bookmark it, because Doreen posts up an enormous amount of information, and she is a tireless, brilliant researcher, and she has. I'm just so thrilled to know Doreen. I kid you not, guys. You haven't heard her recently, but she used to come on my show every Friday when I was on a different radio station. And since when we left that station, the station was sold and so forth and so on. Now we're on Big Country 99, and we're on there every night from midnight to 2, 5 days a week. And then, of course, we're streaming the show all over the web as well. And Doreen will probably start joining us again on Friday morning. She used to come on every Friday morning, and we talk about different events or different things that were happening in the news. Doreen is just, she has got so much information and knowledge. Truthfarmer.com will help you to gather and learn more about her and what and the work that she's doing. I tell you, you will not be disappointed. She's always got a great take on things. The other site that she works on is prcnews.org. And PRC News is Property Rights Coalition News. And that is a blog that kind of gives a lot of information out about what's happening in terms of property rights issues and so forth. Doreen is one of the she has a specific property rights group that she hosts, and she and Bob Parker do that particular one out in Mountain Grove, Missouri. and they meet a couple of days a week. And so make sure that you get out there and meet with those folks. They meet once a month, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when she comes on. So, but the first one we're going to tackle this morning is the DHS's license plate surveillance and the coming police state that we see growing around us. You know, I want to make sure that you understand that, you know, this issue of tyranny and what we're seeing happening across the board in the United States of America is not something that is, you know, I think, I don't know, I get the feeling somehow that people are like waiting for, you know, this overnight sea change to happen, and then the tyranny is going to reach up and slap them straight across the face. I got to tell you, folks, it's not going to happen that way. It's happening to us right now. It's coming in wave after wave after wave after wave, and the water is getting deeper. And if you're not recognizing it for what it is, I'm not sure, you know, what more you need to wake you up. You know, I'm reminded when I think about how tyranny is being instituted in the U.S., I think about that the videos that I saw of a couple of years ago on Christmas Day in Aceh. There was a tsunami that hit. Now, this was due to I think it was an underwater volcano or something like that, or some kind of an explosion or something. And it created a tsunami of sorts that hit this island nation. And when you look at the videos of that, the water first and foremost drew away from the shoreline, and the entire bay area was suddenly dry. I mean, fish were literally, you know, laying there in the mud. And then all of a sudden, when the water came back in, but it didn't come in as this, you know, like a catastrophic movie tidal wave that's 100 yards high. It came in wave after wave after wave after wave after wave. And each one raised the sea level that much more. And suddenly, it broke up over the shore, and then it broke up over the seawall, and then it broke up over the next hill, and the next hill, and the next hill. And it essentially washed this entire place down to nothing. It scoured the ground. And I'm reminded that that's how this is happening to us. It's graduated, and it's graduated in a series of moves and activities that you may not necessarily look at and say, aha, that's it, right there, that's the thing. But it's a culmination of all of these things. It's the molehills that combined turn into the mountain. And I want you to be cognizant of that, because as we see these things happening to us every day, a lot of folks, they want to sit and say, well, that's, you know, come on, you're being overly dramatic, or you're trying to use fear as a tactic, or you're a fear monger, or whatever phrase they want to use. Well, with all due respect, even places like communist China, communist Russia, and Nazi Germany, those places didn't collapse into totalitarianism overnight. There was a long process that they went through. In some cases years, in some cases longer, that brought them to that place. I mean, even Hitler didn't just step into power overnight and suddenly, you know, he was like an overnight sensation. It took years. And we're seeing the same path. And I suspect, and I fear, quite honestly, that many people are waiting for this big event. But it's not going to be a big event. It's already happening. The events are already happening. They've happened already in the past. They're happening now, and they're happening tomorrow. And the culmination of those events is where we are standing. That's where we find ourselves, in dangerous territory, in deep water. And I got to tell you, people, it's happening around us all the time. If you're pretending that it's not because you don't want to face the reality of it, that's something altogether different. But you shouldn't be fooled into thinking that it's not happening at all. It is. You may not recognize it for what it is when you see it, but it doesn't mean it's not happening. Please be cognizant of that and look at events in a different light. Begin to look at them in a sense that says, this is another molehill. But when it's added to the mountain, suddenly we have Everest. The United States is not, we don't have some magical immunity to tyranny. In fact, we're probably even more appropriately scheduled to fall into tyranny and be subjected to it, if only because we fool ourselves into thinking that we're immune. We think we've got this magic inoculation against it, that, because over the last 200 years, our nation has been a nation based and founded upon liberty. But it's only liberty if we maintain it. It's only liberty if we're cognizant of it, if we're watchful over it, if we guard it like it is our most valuable treasured or valuable treasure. Remember that it's fleeting if we allow it to be. One of the ways in which we see these waves, if you will, of tyranny arriving on a daily basis is the things that we see when we talk about stuff like the Department of Homeland Security and this new national license plate recognition database they're instituting. Well, think about that for a minute. They're going to activate a national license plate tracking system, and they're actually setting it up so that a law enforcement agency or agent or anyone can take a NSA tracking device, and with this tracking device, they can snap a picture of your license plate and add it to the database. And suddenly, you are on a hot list of targeted vehicles. Do we really want that? Do we want the Department of Homeland Security and any law enforcement agency or any other approved, qualified agency? And I use those terms with sarcasm because I mean them to be. Do we really want anybody and everybody to be able to go in there and pull up our license plate and be able to see where we've been traversing? Well, let's see. We picked up the plate on traffic cameras in Ohio. And then we picked up the plate in Illinois on a routine parking lot scan where we drove through a parking lot and just scanned every plate. Don't tell me they're not doing that. They are doing that. It's already done, folks. That system is already in place. But the databases aren't connected. So, the database that's in Philadelphia is not the same database that's in Milwaukee, which is not the same database that's in Houston, Texas. But under Department of Homeland Security's license plate recognition database, all of those databases will be cooperatively linked. And once they're linked, you can be tracked anywhere by anyone. And I'll be honest with you, you don't have to look far to see the abuse of people who are in these, who have access to these systems, who misuse or abuse these systems for their own personal gain or their own curiosity. There's an article that was posted up in InfoWars about it. And, they remind you that when you look at the behavior characteristics of people in positions of authority, as Jefferson told us, we shouldn't trust them. We should bind them down with the chains of the Constitution. And in their case, because these are, local human beings that have problems and a life themselves, they misuse databases to go look up an ex-girlfriend and who's she dating now, or who's dating my son or my daughter, or who's dating my ex-wife, or who's dating my husband, my ex-husband, my current husband. Look, the point is this. People are not above reproach. And we know for a fact that people abuse the privileges of having this kind of information. So why would we give them even more? That's like sitting there and taking somebody who's a crack addict and saying, we're going to move you off of this street corner where you have to scrounge every day to find crack, and we're going to park you in a crack house where it's free all day long. Why would you put that kind of temptation in front of somebody and expect they're not going to take advantage of it? It's really, this is common sense stuff, folks. You don't have to be a philosopher to draw the conclusion that when you put unlimited temptation in front of people, even people who ordinarily would be considered good people. But suddenly a circumstance or situation arrives in their life that changes their status from a good person to someone who is, emotionally endangered. And then they start to use this kind of information against you. How about the political aspects of knowing that you go to this church or that church, or you've attended this political rally or meeting? Forget your personal life. Forget whether somebody's tracking you to find out who you're dating. How about whether or not they follow you around and determine where you go and how you work and where you travel and the places that you frequent on a routine basis? Even when that's completely innocent. You see, I keep hearing people say, well, look, I got nothing to fear. I don't care if they look at my email or if they read what what are they going to do? See the pictures I send of my grandchildren? It's not that. It's that, first of all, knowing that you're being monitored or tracked or surveilled changes your behavior. It does, and you can't deny that it does. It changes your behavior. And with that behavioral change comes a chilling effect. A chilling effect on who you talk to, what you talk about, when, how, where, who you write to, who you email. When you are suddenly in fear of everything that you do or say or talk about because you're concerned about the fact that some of your information is being monitored or tracked, I mean, realistically, folks, you got to recognize what we're talking about here. These are issues which are life-changing for us. When you are tracked on a national basis, and everything that you do, and everywhere you go, and everything you say, and everything you hear, and everything you read is all subject to being looked at by individuals who, quite frankly, have no allegiance to you, and in fact, more often than not, are dangerous to you. Something's desperately wrong with that. And when you have no control over it, and you have nothing to say about who gets access to it and under what circumstance, that's reason to be nervous, reason to be fearful, reason to be determined not to allow it to happen. When they tie all of these systems together and incorporate them with what the rest of the stuff that the DHS is promoting, and for the record, the fusion centers that are already out there that belong to the DHS, if you don't know what these fusion centers are, they already tie all of your street cameras and all of your governmental cameras together. And then they pump all of this information to one centralized fusion center, which, by the way, some recent studies have been done to evaluate their effectiveness, and they've had zero effect. In fact, the only effect they've really had is to allow people manning them to abuse the information within them. They're a joint operation between the FBI and DHS and local and county and city police. So they take all of these traffic cameras and street surveillance cameras and street corner cameras that the cities are putting out. Now the DHS is promoting these intelligent light poles that actually have cameras mounted on them, and they have microphones on them that are strong enough to actually pick up conversations in the street below. We want all of this. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't read 1984 in a while, I encourage you to go back and read it again. That's where we are. Do we really want this? Is this good for us? When you're walking down the street and you've got to be fearful about what you're saying because a light pole may be picking it up. Wow. Folks, that's not... the typical phrase that's used in that is Orwellian because it so well describes the total surveillance system. But it's more than that. It's creepy. It's frightening. Who's listening? What are they doing with all that information? What kind of a voyeuristic monster sits there all day listening and monitoring and watching other people and is not affected by that mentally on their own? Don't tell me they don't get just as addicted to the voyeurism as the heroin addict does to the needle, as the politician does to the power. Don't tell me they don't. Human nature is that. We know that much about human nature. Give them that power, give them that authority, and they will misuse it. Even when they didn't start out to be that way. I got to tell you, folks. At the bottom of this article from InfoWars, it says there's a guy who's quoted here who's James Smith. He's somebody who's contributing to the article. It says, "Do not kid yourself. This is tracking of an individual that can be accessed at a whim. Yearly, officers are terminated for accessing the LEDS and NCIC and SCIC databases. Those are the National Crime Information Databases, State Crime Information Databases. Looking into the histories of ex-lovers, future spouses, potential sons or daughters-in-law, and with license plate tracking toys, not tools. They will know where you are, as long as you have driven into one of the crosshairs of this new open weapon for tyranny." Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is there. You need to look at this evidence and say, I find them guilty. You're listening to America's Voice. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Doreen was going to join us this morning. Doreen Hannes. Make sure that you visit and support our sponsors and our friends who make sure that this program stays on the air every day. The friends over at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco, by the way, excellent group of folks. Make sure that you swing by there if you're any time in the city of West Plains. They're right on the square. You can also call them at 257-1776. That's 417-257-1776. They also ship products, so they've got all kinds of things for smoke shop accessories and things like that. All kinds of custom and classic tobaccos and things. Wits End Classic Barbershop, 417-372-2027, where you can get yourself a great haircut for $10. The law offices of Jason Henry, handling civil and criminal cases as well as state and federal issues. You can reach him at 417-256-4100. Our friends over at the Mini Mart Expresses 1 and 2, lowest fountain drinks that you can find in the area. They're both located in West Plains. Their fountain drinks run from 39 cents and up, which is really, really inexpensive. They have a drive-through at both locations, so you don't even have to get out of the car in this lousy weather. One is located on 14 and 63 in the old Granny's Cafe building. Make sure that you swing by there and say hi to them and tell them you heard about it on America's Voice Now. Swing by the other location, which is right across the street from the City Pool in West Plains. And make sure while you're in town, you swing by the Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. You grab yourself a lunch special during their buffet, or you can certainly go in there on Tuesday night at family nights. Make sure also you see our friends over at Battery Station at batterystation.com. You can also reach them via telephone. You can call them at 417-257-7799, and they'll be more than happy to help you out with whatever your concerns or needs are. They ship all the way across the country, and they are one of the largest distributors of batteries and similar products across the United States. They have tons of tactical gear and all kinds of things. So make sure that you swing by there and work with those folks. We'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Hey, Dor, hang on. Hey, Dor, hang on a second.
Okay.
You can call them at 417-257-7799, and they'll be more than happy to help you out with whatever your concerns or needs are. They ship all the way across the country, largest batteries, similar products across the United States. All right, we're back. I'm not quite sure why we're getting a repeat echo there, but for some reason we are. Glad to have you guys on board this morning. Thank you very much for joining with us. Nice to have you here. We are going to be joined this morning by Doreen Hannes. Doreen, as I'd mentioned to you earlier, is a friend of ours and a longtime advocate and patriot fighting for issues across the nation. Doreen is very, very active with her own blog, which I strongly encourage you to visit. That blog can be found at her website, truthfarmer.com. And then you can also find her located on a secondary blog that she works on, which is prcnews.org. The PRC News is the Property Rights Coalition site, and essentially, wow, why am I getting this terrible echo? Glad to have you guys on board this morning. Hang on. Thank you very much for joining with us. Nice to have you here. We are going to be joined. I don't know why everything I'm talking about is being fed back to me. That's very disturbing. Advocate. Frustrating. Ugh. Man, I am so tired of working with underqualified equipment here, folks, and I just can't afford any better. So frustrating. You can also find... I don't even know where that repeat is coming from. Ah, man. Well, okay. I don't know what the issue is here, and I can't figure out how to kill this. Double back. Good morning, Doreen.
Straightened out?
Well, I don't know. For some reason, I was getting a repeat on everything that we talked about, and it is still repeating. I am so tired of... Let me work to resolve this, and I'll bring you on. I'll call you back. I can't afford any better.
All right, no problem.
Sorry, hon. Well, I don't know what that feedback problem is. Good Lord, you know. And it's live radio, right? Gotta love it. Well, all right. So we were going to bring Doreen on and have her discuss with us some of the stuff that's going on around the country, and I don't know why I cannot resolve this repeat. So, if you're catching us live on Patriot FB, I can't. Man, I'm so frustrated. Let me work to... And it's still repeating. All right, so we're just going to move along. I'm going to talk about other issues, and I'll get this issue resolved as soon as I possibly can, and we'll try to figure out why this is doing this consistent repeat. You know, I had planned to have Doreen on this morning because we wanted to talk about some stuff around Missouri, as many of you know, and of course Doreen is involved in a lot of issues, but as many of you know, we've got a couple of issues going on here with the Ozark Scenic National Riverways issues, and we've got stuff going on with our state governor, who is there's been some articles of impeachment that have been filed against him, and there's members of the House that are working to try to establish and figure out how they're going to remove him from office, and if they can get this thing together, they've got a number of issues that they're working on to try to bring him to a point of impeachment, and so we wanted to talk a little bit about some of those, as well as there's a host of issues going on in Missouri, including the one where Jason Smith, has the House representative member for the 8th District, has recently filed to have the property for the Ozark Scenic National Riverways returned to the state of Missouri because they have been so abusive of the people in the community here, while basically just living as ticks on the revenue and on the local community here. And it's gotten to the point where we're trying to remove them from the ownership of that property and get it returned back to the state of Missouri. So anyway, I'll bring Doreen on when I can resolve that dilemma. I'm not quite sure what it is. So anyhow, let's talk about a couple of other issues, because there's certainly no shortage of issues that we can address. I kind of wanted Doreen's input on some of those things, but won't be able to do that this morning. The issue of the which we talked about before in this surveillance database is only the tip of the iceberg here, because there are so many issues surrounding surveillance and the complete surveillance state of the United States that there's an article out this morning that military contractors are now going to be mining your Twitter feed. And when we talk about these types of issues, you got to wonder, what exactly is it that these guys have, that they feel so determined that they're going to constantly, that they have to know everything about you? I mean, it's almost pornographic. Really. It's almost voyeuristically pornographic. When you've got people that want to know everything about you, down to the clothing that you wear and what you talk about and who you talk about, they can tell you that it's about terrorism and that it's about monitoring your traffic to see if you're involved with someone or someone. You know what? It's all a bunch of lies. There's something literally wrong with this nation where you've got a group of people who believe that, sitting there and watching you is not in some way psychologically a disease. And I believe it is. I think that the people who, you've heard many times that the constant watching of pornography becomes abusive, right? In other words, people begin to, it changes and rewires their mind. Well, guess what, folks? If you don't think that people sitting around all day long, reading your tweets, reading your emails, watching what you're doing on cameras, listening to your phone calls, if you don't think that that affects them, if you don't think that they become addicted to that, you're wrong. If you think that it's only a kid playing video games or only a person who becomes addicted to surfing the internet, or they say that people who are constantly on their NSA personal tracking devices are subjected, there's all kinds of psychological problems that come as a result of that. If you think that they're alone on that, you're mistaken. Because when you are sitting there monitoring somebody else's communications, you become involved in that little micro world, if you will. And the truth is, there's something desperately wrong with that. When you become that tragically, if you will, connected to what other people are doing and seeing or whatever, you are constantly bombarded by these images of other people or their communications or their emails or their phone calls. And frankly, there's something wrong with it. Anybody that would want to subject themselves to that has got to question their motives and what's in it for them. I don't get it. I really don't understand why someone would want to subject themselves to that. And you can't tell me that it's not affecting them. And it's not affecting the way in which they live their life and view the world. I'll give you an example. Many of you know that I spent time in a federal prison for a crime which I'll say until the day I die, and I know everybody says they didn't do it, they're not guilty, but that's not true. Many of them are, but there are many who aren't, or were guilty of crimes that really aren't crime, but that's a whole different topic. But I can tell you this, I watched people come in there, young individuals, young men for the most part, and even women, come in there and they became a guard at a facility. And when they first came in, they had this, totally different attitude than they had 3 months later, because they were influenced by everything around them. And when they first came in, they were determined to be fair and equitable and so forth and so on, and they gave everybody the benefit of the doubt. And it didn't take more than a month or two before you started to see that change come over them. Within 6 months, they were almost sadistic. Don't tell me it doesn't happen. Don't tell me it's not happening right now. It is. And it's affecting you. It's affecting them. It's affecting all of us. And so I really don't understand how we can sit and not recognize it for what it is. And refuse to participate. We do not want or shouldn't want this kind of a situation in our world. There's something wrong when you have people who will spend their entire lives watching other people. Ask any psychologist or psychiatrist whether that's good. Ask them. See what they have to say about it. I guarantee you, they'll tell you there's something wrong with that. I know there is. Now secret military contractors are going to mine your tweets. The Army wants a contractor to conduct detailed social media data mining to identify violent extremist influences around the world that could affect European Command, responsible for operations in Europe and Ireland, Israel. You know what? That's a bunch of crap. What they're going to do is monitor you. They're going to monitor you. You know, they may start over in Europe, but once they get the ball rolling, they'll be slamming this down all of our throats. And I don't know about you, but I've had it with the police state. I'm done with it. I'm sick of it. I'm fed up with it. I don't want any more of it. And I'm tired of feeling like everything you do, you've got to be. Don't tell me that you have not already experienced the scenario where you are concerned about being monitored. In other words, don't tell me that you have not already had a scenario where you have been concerned about what's actually occurring in your own life, where you're changing the way in which you think or talk or speak or act or anything else. I know you are. And I know every one of us has that same concern. So the real question is, and I think I just resolved our problem, by the way. The real question is whether or not we want to be infected that way. I don't know about you, but I've had enough of it. Doreen, are you with us?
I am here.
And I apologize. I figured out what that problem was.
Okay, well, that's good. I still have a little bit of an echo on my end.
Do you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry. I can't. That I probably will not be able to fix. At least
All right,
not immediately.
Let me call you back, and we'll give this one more shot.
You got it.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye. So we'll try to bring Doreen back on and let her. Let's see if it makes a difference if she calls in here. And I apologize to you guys. You know, this program and show, folks, runs on a shoestring. And when I tell you a shoestring, it's a shoestring that I support personally out of my pocket. And frankly, I can't afford any more. I already spend far more money on this than most people would even dream about. It's the equivalent of a significant budget. You know, I could pay somebody's mortgage with the amount of money it costs me to run this program every month. So I just can't afford better equipment. And if you want to make equipment available to us or donate to us, that's great. But until that, you're just going to have to live with the problems. Good morning, Doreen. Is that any better?
I'm trying. Let's see. Yeah, I still got a little bit of a whack back.
Okay, I'm sorry. There's just so many limits to what we can do with the equipment that we have, and I guess this is one of them. So you'll forgive me.
Well, that's all right. You know, these kinds of things happen, and technology is not necessarily controllable.
Right. Well, I'd like to have a discussion with you this morning, and we kind of wanted to cover some of the stuff that's going on in Missouri in reference to the Ozark Scenic National Riverways stuff, the things that are happening with the facial recognition stuff, and then also what's happening with PRC News and what we can do to try to or at least give us some kind of an update on that. If you'd like, we can tackle these one at a time, or in any order you want to handle.
Okay, well, I'm not certain how much of hearing myself bounce back in my ears that I can take.
I get you.
But one of the issues, Mike, on the Real ID subject, we have some legislators who are looking at trying to fix the issue. However, they have to completely prohibit the state from uploading any of this data outside of the state borders and enforce the Fourth Amendment. And if that doesn't happen, then none of this is going to matter.
Well, how do we accomplish that?
We need legislation that specifically prohibits the agencies from transferring biometric data, information that you have to give to the License Bureau to get your license, from being uploaded outside of the state without a specific warrant indicating the person, their last known residence, and requesting that specific information.
Well, I saw that the one piece of legislation that dealt with this, but then at the end of it, they pulled facial recognition out of there, and which is essentially the one piece of information we really don't want tied to all of this.
Right, but the larger issue is that all of this information is being uploaded to Morpho Trust and then disseminated internationally.
Right.
So without specifically prohibiting the agency of the state uploading this information beyond state borders without a warrant, we cannot put the genie back in the bottle.
So Missouri's House of Representatives and the state Senate, or the Assembly as a collective group, they know what these issues are. Who's submitting the right legislation to lock this thing down and get it stopped?
No one yet.
Well, there is the problem.
No one yet.
I mean, who have you talked to about it that will draft that type of legislation? Anybody?
Well, currently we're talking with Michael Moon, and then I understand that there are a couple of other representatives who are interested in trying to fix this issue. But no one has, with a specific prohibition against allowing the citizens of this state who have driver's license from having their information exchanged with Morpho Trust outside of the state. You know, and it would actually require that the driver's license bureaus bring back their old equipment, and I think it ought to be done at the expense of the Department of Revenue, Mike.
Well, the way that they're doing that now with these driver's license issues, they were told to stop doing the facial recognition. Now they did stop doing the scanning of the birth records and so forth. But what they didn't stop doing was the facial recognition cameras. And, of course, everybody always does the old Bugs Bunny point in different directions, right? Because they say, well, we're just doing what we're told to do. And then the state turns around and says, well, you know, we can't make them remove the cameras and all that nonsense because these are not – every motor vehicle department is independent, right? They're not owned by the state like they are in some other places. And so we just keep getting this endless runaround game that no one wants to ever become accountable for what's happening. And it's like nobody has any accountability. There's no resolutions. There's just no way to resolve the problem.
The problem is that there isn't the will to resolve the problem.
There you go, I think.
You know, the Department of Revenue requires the license bureaus to have specific equipment.
Okay.
And then the license bureaus go for the track to provide that service within that area for X amount of time. And the DOR gives them this contract. So, I mean, there's no problem with the Department of Revenue requiring that the license bureaus be able to provide XYZ services, right?
Right.
However, What the problem is that the Department of Revenue and the state of Missouri has agreed to violate the state of Missouri's law.
Right. The Real ID, and we I don't know why they're filed impeachment papers against or resolution against Nixon for what they did, because the truth is they have so many other ways and so many other reasons, including the violation of the Real ID prohibition law that was passed here. I mean, we have a letter, and you've seen it, that was from 2010 thanking the governor for implementation of Real ID when the prohibition was passed in 2009. So fully a year later. I mean, I don't know how much more proof and documentation they need to say the governor was violating the law. And a violation of the law by the governor should be enough to say, that's it.
I would agree with you.
So why is it no one has a political will in this state?
Well, I'm just going to throw something out there that I don't really have the answer to.
Okay.
But when our representatives take the oath to take their elected position, there's a question here that I have. Not only do they swear to uphold the Constitution, they swear to keep the secrets of the House.
Is that
now,
so?
what are the secrets of the House?
Are you? Wait a minute. Stop right there. Go back and let me hear this again.
Look at the oath that they have to take in order to hold public office.
Okay.
They swear to uphold the secrets of the House.
Really? Is this House and Senate, or just the House?
I believe it's like the House of the Senate and the Senate, This House of Congress and that House of Congress.
Okay. So you're trying to tell me that these people take an oath that they will uphold not necessarily the law, but will keep secrets?
That's what the oath says, Mike.
This is news to me. I was not aware of that.
Well, when I found this out a couple of years ago, I looked at it on the federal level and I looked at the state level. Same thing.
Okay.
And I don't know what the secrets are. And I haven't asked, to be honest with you.
Well, that's in and of itself is disturbing.
I think so.
The Missouri Constitution says the oath of office of members of the Assembly and administration. It says here that every senator or representative-elect, before entering upon the duties of his or her office, shall take and subscribe the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Missouri, and faithfully perform the duties of my office, and that I will not knowingly receive, directly or indirectly, any money or other valuable thing for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty pertaining to my office, other than the compensation allowed by law. That's the one that I'm not quite sure I found this. It's on moga.missouri.gov, a General Assembly site or of some sort, and that's from August of 2013.
Okay. Well, I can, I'll look and find this information again, but I did indeed find it, and I found it both at the state and federal level.
Okay. Let's take a look into that, because right off the bat, if that's the case, then right away you've got a serious conflict of interest, because if the secrets, we don't know what they are, so we don't really know whether or not they affect it or whether they affect the issue or not, right? We're going to take a quick break. Can you stick with us, Doreen, for the break?
Sure.
All right. I apologize, folks, for these electronic snafus. Just stick with us. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll talk again with Doreen about either this issue or any other. For the record, you can find Doreen's blog by going to truthfarmer.com. That's truthfarmer.com. And then also she contributes to the prcnews.org blog. PRC News is Property Rights Coalition News.org. prcnews.org. Both of those blogs, the truthfarmer.com blog is Doreen's own personal, and it is just chock full of information. I strongly encourage you to read and participate with that and bookmark it as well. And then the PRC News will give you all kinds of information about property rights issues, not only here but around the nation. We'll be right back.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice. You're joining us in our third segment on a Friday. Today is February 14th, and that would make this Valentine's Day, folks. I'm sure it doesn't feel very cheery and spring-like in a lot of places in the country. As you know, the weather has been kind of rough around the nation, and so I wish all of you, wherever you may be, a nice Valentine or a happy and healthy Valentine's Day and a safe one. But in most parts of the country, I suspect that you're probably your roses are wilting. So, not to be mean about it, but so Doreen, this issue with the state and their inability to be effectual, and you know, I've long been concerned about some of the things that I feel like the state does, and for whatever reason, it seems like no matter how appropriate these people seem to be when we first put them into office, it doesn't take long once they're in office for them to basically start to change. Have you noticed the same?
Yes, I have. And I wish that weren't the case, but most of the time, I think there's the power structure, if you will, this is the way we do things here.
Well, I
think that's what comes into effect.
This is the way we do things here stuff, as far as I'm concerned, is inexcusable. When these people first get elected, they promise to go up there and do the right thing. They get into office, and it doesn't take long before they begin to come back to their home constituency and say, well, we've got to listen to what everybody has to say, and we've got to make these, compromises for the benefit. And as soon as I hear that word compromise, I know exactly where they're headed. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, what we need here is less compromise and a lot more stick-to-itiveness to the policies and principles that they had when they first went in. And it's not limited just to federal people; it's our state people, and it's even people in local city councils and things like that. I know people who sit on city councils that, before they went in, I would have called them somebody who would have been a good candidate for office. Then they get in there, and you look at them a year later, and you're like, wow, something happened with this person.
Right. So, well, I think the issue, Michael, is that most people get in there and they're trying to figure out how things work, and they're kind of led along this path of politics is the art of compromise.
Yeah. Well, that word compromise, only works when you're talking about things that you should be compromising on that are not, as an example, against the law. The idea that you can compromise with an administrative agency that has no opportunity or real right to exist is a completely different problem, right? When I hear about them talking with things like DNR and the Conservation Department and things like that, where they, to use the state example, or Department of Revenue and the motor vehicle issue, with all due respect, none of those agencies have a legitimate right to exist. They're agencies by their very nature, which means that they are run by people who are appointed and not elected. And so, therefore, they're not accountable to us as a state. And when I talked, as an example, when we were at that meeting with the Ozark Scenic National Riverways issue, and I talked to people from the Federal National Parks Group, I asked a couple of them, I said, do you take an oath of office? And they said, no, we don't. Well, when you hear that you've got people who are making rules and regulations that parade about like law but aren't taking an oath of office, that tells you something right there. They're not obviously committed to doing what we would expect of a representative to do who's got an oath that is their foremost goal, if you will, right?
Right. And the thing is that the legislators have the biggest control over the agencies by holding the purse strings.
Yeah, but they don't ever want to seem to use them.
They don't use that control.
Right. Why don't they?
I think it's the larger issue of the societal view where these agencies provide people with gifts, grants, funding, those kinds of things, and they're worried about blowback from not giving their constituents perks, if you will.
Yeah. Well,
pork, I guess, more appropriately.
Right, right. Well, I see some states doing some things that are appropriate, like, we've got our Second Amendment Preservation Act here, which, I don't know, by the way, did you see that thing from the NRA where they came out and they misinformed a bunch of constituents at the NRA and are throwing that whole thing under the bus and telling people not to vote for it or not to approve it?
I did not see that, Mike.
Well, yesterday I got an email.
You tell me about it, because I need to know.
Okay. The Second Amendment Preservation Act, for listeners, is in Missouri right now. It's wending its way through the Senate, and then it will go to the House. And essentially, we passed it last year, but the governor vetoed it. In this case, the Second Amendment Preservation Act has been reinstituted and corrected or whatever, so that the governor can't use the same excuse to veto it. And the NRA came out the other day and said that this has, and they were misinformed, actually, stating that there was a prohibition in there that they couldn't agree with, and so therefore you should call all NRA members should call their legislator and tell them to reject Senate Bill 613. And they weren't even accurate about it. And so I've been, and I have a notation up on AVN or on our Facebook page about it, where basically I'm telling people to call up the NRA ILA organization and tell them, mind your own doggone business, because, we've been working at this for years now, and suddenly they step in here and with the wrong information tell people to call their representative and trash a bill which we've all worked very, very, very hard to make happen. And I don't know where the NRA decides, one, that they get the right to start meddling in our business, but more importantly, how they got this wrong information and didn't verify it or identify any of the issues before they went out there and shot their mouth off. And, this Second Amendment Preservation Act, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the things that Missouri really needs to do to restore its own state sovereignty, right? Much like, what you see going on
right.
in Maryland and Utah with them trying to cut off the NSA's water and power and stuff like that.
Which is just beautiful.
I'm loving that, right? Maryland is actually threatening to cut off the water and the power to Fort Meade, and terminate the access to that. And I know that you were talking about Utah doing the same thing. What's the update on that?
Well, I know that it's been introduced, and beyond that, I don't know, but it's 1.7 million gallons of water a day that the NSA needs to run those data centers.
California is under a water shortage right now with the worst drought that they've seen in modern history, and I'm sure that water would be valuable if Utah could redistribute it to California instead of to the NSA. And, I guess I don't really have like a mental picture of what 1.7 million gallons of water is, but it's a lot of water. That much I do know. And I'm sure that California could use it.
Well, and Utah is not exactly a very wet state.
Right.
And a few years ago, there was a car dealership that was using its roof to harvest the rainwater so that they could use that water and, and cleaning the cars and stuff like that. And that guy got fined for, basically taking the water of the state.
Say that again. What now?
He was fined. Car dealership owner in Utah had harvested the rainwater from the roof of his building with which to wash the cars on the lot.
Right.
And he was prohibited from doing it again. And my understanding is he was fined for that.
Right. When you
and yet the NSA sucking up all that water.
Yeah. We've got Fort Meade, especially. That water deal that they've got in Maryland is worth $2 million a year, apparently. And they use enough electricity in Fort Meade, just in Fort Meade, for the NSA to be able. It's the equivalent of what Baltimore uses. Which I mean, when I read that, I was like, "You got to be kidding!" I'm not even sure that's. I don't know how that's even possible. That's an enormous amount of electricity and water. And the western side of Maryland is on top of that. They're talking about trying to, just frankly, they're at the point where they just want to secede away, as does, northern Colorado and northern California and a couple of other states as well. But they're, and all of it is
Missouri.
Southern Missouri. I'd love to do that. I'd love to kick that off. In fact, we should probably start a Facebook page and start getting that thing to load up with people who would be interested in pursuing it. Would you be interested in working on that?
Before you know it, Obama would have his 57 states.
I had forgotten that he actually said that. You're right, though. He was claiming the 57 states, and there you go. We'll have it shortly if we just keep up the pressure, right? Tell me what you think.
I'm not really certain. I mean, right now, Mike, with the way that everything is, I think the most important thing for people to do is to get themselves as prepared as possible to see themselves through at least 3 months of turmoil.
Right. And I would agree with you wholeheartedly there.
I feel that.
We've been kind of looking at this issue of how things are migrating, and I believe that 3 months is probably the absolute minimum that people should be preparing for. And when we talk about preparing, it's not just a question of food and water and that kind of thing, but also medicines that you need. I think a lot of people overlook that area. They don't think about the fact that if they survive on medication because they've got some kind of a chronic issue or illness, that if they don't have that, they're going to be in a lot of trouble, right?
Right. Right. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that go into it, and there's also an awareness that everyone has to have that we will never be able to be completely prepared.
Well, that's true, right? I don't care how much you prepare. I don't think it's enough. I mean, there's just no way that you can prepare properly for something like this because we're not accustomed to having, this kind of a massive change in our lives. And yet, we've been accepting this kind of, snowballing tyranny, if you will, for so long now that I think, by the time people... I mentioned in the first segment before you came on with us that this idea of tyranny is not something that just happens all at once, but we've been allowing it and watching it come on us, kind of like that, like a tidal wave, but it moves in stages. And as we move into this and we go further, people aren't, I don't think, if they did have that overnight drop of the hammer, so to speak, they wouldn't know what the heck to do about it. I mean, I don't care how prepared you are for that. The psychological impacts are something you can, as an example, prepare for.
Right. And we have a normalcy bias, and I think that everyone kind of needs to have that because we have to continue to do our day-to-day business. So we can't go into this complete lockdown prepper mode without without some kind of modification on our behavior, right?
Right. Absolutely. and
So, we just have to do it as a matter of course, I think. And I think that the better prepared we are, the better we will be able to weather whatever upset we might be presented with. If it's unemployment or if it's economic crunch, how about this propane issue?
Right. What is it, $4 or $5 a gallon in a lot of places around the country?
Well, right, and the ramifications of it are not things that people are really aware of. One thing is that the chicken houses, which are about an 8 to 10 week turnaround on those chickens, are almost all shut down because they couldn't get propane or they couldn't afford it if they could get it.
So expound on that. Tell me what you mean.
Okay, in the chicken growing industry, for those who have the large broiler houses, they predominantly heat with propane. Now, there are no national level articles on the issue, but if you go and you look through on Google search or whatever and look for propane chicken growers, you will find a plethora of local articles about how devastating this is to those chicken producers.
So they can't. In other words, they can't warm their chicken houses. Is that the deal?
Right. And you have to keep it above 90 degrees until they feather out.
Oh. Well, so does that mean we should expect chicken shortages?
There's going to be a massive increase in price.
Well, I just read an article the other day that the United States now consumes more chicken than beef for the first time in history. In other words, we've flip-flopped it from beef used to be the number one meat source or protein source, and now it's migrated to chicken.
Right. Well, and chicken is also historically a lot less expensive in recent history.
Well, I've noticed the price of it climbing.
I think that's a reflection.
I've noticed the price of it climbing pretty dramatically of late, and I'm not too kicked about that because, based on the fact that it's the number one, based on the fact that it's the number one protein out there, and I don't know about you, but if you look at the price of like ground beef or beef in general, it's really, really gone up through the roof. And I don't think people, everybody just kind of accepts it, but maybe that's why people have been switching over to chicken because of the pricing issue alone.
I would think that would be the issue, Mike. But the beef prices are going to go through the roof as well because all of the head cattle that were lost in that South Dakota snowstorm and this very hard winter.
Yeah, this winter I think is going to change the whole meat industry, especially. And I hadn't thought about the chicken and the propane thing. I'm glad you brought that up. But there's been an enormous shortage of cattle, and they're saying that this is the lowest cattle count we've had in forever, like since the 70s or something.
51. Since 1951.
Oh, really? Okay, it's even further back than I thought.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
Right, and I don't recall off the top of my head what the population of the U.S. was in 51.
Yeah.
But the fact is that we have a much higher population and much lower cattle population than is, sustainable, if you will.
Right. Well, and Missouri is a big producer of cattle, and this winter has certainly been very, very difficult here. I mean, this has probably been the hardest winter. I've lived here for 13 years, and this is the hardest winter I've ever seen here by far.
I'm with you, brother, right there. I was so happy that it warmed up yesterday. You wouldn't even believe it.
Well, somebody told me the good news is it's supposed to be like almost 60 this weekend. So whether or not that's true, I don't know, but I'm hoping.
I'm ready for it.
Me too.
I'm ready, willing, and able to take warmer weather. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, I can tell we've got this terrible echo delay on there, and I'm not quite sure what the issue is with the phone system, but I can assure you that I'll work on getting it resolved, and then I'll ask you to come back on when we can spend a little bit more time and not have that terrible delay in there, because I know it's very, very difficult for you to kind of hear what I'm talking about, and then there's this terrible pause between because you're waiting for the echo to go out of your ear, and you're hearing yourself back, so I apologize for that.
Yes, it's interesting.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, Doreen, let me get that problem fixed, and maybe next Friday we can bring you back on and have you, and we can have an intelligent conversation that doesn't require that we talk like astronauts in space in Houston, Texas.
All right, Mike.
Over.
Take care. Thank you.
All right,
Talk to you
sweetie.
later.
Thanks so much. Over. Guys, that was Doreen Hannes. She is a dear friend, and I apologize for the technical issues on this. I don't know what the problem was, but we've got one problem resolved and another one that's there. So I'll work to resolve it, but it's just there. Probably beyond my technical skills. We'll have to figure out why we have so much background noise. The truth is, a lot of it is because we work with equipment that is really not truly intended for this, and so we make it work, but it comes with its own set of problems. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to talk about Iran, secret deals, and the United States, for whatever reason, insistence on capitulating to the nation of Iran, and why they are... why everything in this government has to be such a secret. I don't get it. I mean, it seems like everything that we talk about and everything that's going on in the United States has got to be a secret. And the fact that we've gotten this, that we've got this Iranian deal here, and the Congress hasn't been allowed to see the text of it, and the people haven't been allowed to see the text of it, and I'm getting tired of hearing that everything that the president does has got to be a secret. If you get a chance, visit our sponsors and support those folks in any way that you can. You can get to Express Mini Marts 1 and 2 here in West Plains, one up on the corner of 14 and 63, the Route 14 and 63, one across the street from the city park in West Plains on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. They have a drive-through location there that would stand you in good stead if you don't want to get out of your car in the cold weather, and they're two great locations. I encourage you to visit those folks and let them know that you appreciate them sponsoring AVN. Make sure that you see our friends over at Wits End Classic Barbershop, 417-372-2027, and Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop at 417-257-1776. Patriot Cigar and Tobacco holds parties, by the way, in that facility. So if you are looking to have a bachelor party or something, it's a great way to do so. Law offices of Jason Henry, 417-256-4100 on the square in West Plains. And then, of course, our friends over at Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut, you can swing by there, and Tuesday evenings is family night. Kids under 12 eat free. The Battery Station at 417-257-7799 or batterystation.com. And Airbridge Group, where they build great websites and do e-learning programs. You can find them by going to airbridgegroup.com, or you can call 417-204-4024. We'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to America's Voice Now. When we come back, we're going to talk about this Iranian issue. We are backing off our carrier presence in the Persian Gulf, and you got to wonder why. We'll be back in just a sec. Okay, this is our final segment, 4 of 4 for the day, and to be honest with you, the way I muffed up that segment with Doreen, I can't wait for today's show to end. Oh, boy, I'll tell you what. Dan Collins, by the way, who's a friend of mine, he has a farm here in Missouri, and he offers. Well, he's got a couple. He's got a website that you should probably be taking advantage of. Looks like this is Mark. Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
How you doing? I saw 215, so I knew that was you.
Hey, listen, I just want to commend you and Doreen for all the great work you guys are doing there in Missouri. Even though you guys are not original Missourians, and it's blowing my mind that you're actually looking out for Missourians even more so than many original native Missourians. So I really appreciate that. I'm getting quite an echo here. I don't know why.
Because that's the same problem Doreen had, Mark, and I apologize for it. It's we'll try to work it out and get it fixed. I'm not quite sure where it's coming from. So, but I appreciate that, and thank you for that call. You know, Doreen is a tireless patriot, and she really does a great job of working on not only on these property rights issues, but general across the board info. You know, and you're right. I don't know where Doreen's from originally. I'm definitely not from Missouri.
She's a Wisconsinner.
Is she from Wisconsin? Okay. I spent the majority of my earlier life in the Eastern Seaboard in New Jersey and New York area, and but I got here as fast as I could, and I really love this place, and I love the middle part of the country because there's a different feel and a different dynamic to the center of the country that you don't get on the coast. And I've been in a lot of places around the United States, and I've been to a lot of bigger cities and smaller cities, and the lifestyle here is different, and in a lot of ways it's better. And so I certainly encourage people to be cognizant of what we have out in the middle of the nation here. If you don't live if you're on the coast and you're in Philadelphia, so you know what I'm talking about. But when you come to a place like this, instead of trying to change that place into that's the problem we have with illegals. They come over here and then they want us to become just like the Mexico they just left, and it's like, well, why would you want that? Why don't you just go back home?
All right. Well, I'm originally from southern Missouri, and anyway, there's some historical significance to Missouri, and a lot of people don't know that during the Civil War, if you take into account all the battles and the skirmishes, there were more battles and skirmishes in total than any other state during the Civil War. And also being that Missouri was the gateway to the West and the Pony Express and all that, there's a lot of historical significance. So I don't think it's coincidental that you're there, Mike, fighting the good fight. You're on the leading edge, and I really appreciate what you're talking about.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Mark.
I wanted to share with you, by the way, my understanding is there's some kind of a prepper thing going on in Springfield for the locals there this weekend. I think it's at this old Sears building or Sears Convention Center or whatever.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that, but I'm not aware of it.
The other thing I wanted to bring up was the NRA thing. I just called the NRA ILA, and they're closed today because of the snow.
Yeah, I tried to call
But the whole deal is last year when they didn't speak one way or the other on the issue of the Second Amendment Preservation Act, and you'd think that of all organizations, the NRA would be speaking up one way or the other about that. Now they're speaking against it, which is absolutely abhorrible. And people need to wake up. And I'm new to the gun thing. But these guys that have been in guns for a long time who've joined the NRA, they're part of an organization that are compromisers, and I don't trust them.
Right.
Well, I don't think they're looking out for the interest.
What really bothers me is that they first of all their argument was wrong, and second, because they were claiming that the bill has an effect that it doesn't have, and instead of making sure of what they were out there positing to their members. They just went out there and said, call your senator and tell him not to support this. And the last thing we need is an alleged gun-supporting or gun rights organization who's fighting against gun rights. I mean, what the heck do they think they're doing?
All right. Well, also, I'm learning that Sheriff Mack got involved with the deal that's going on in Arizona. Arizona's putting forth some legislation to give the feds a heads up.
Yeah. Well, Sheriff Mack has got a great group out there, and I strongly encourage and support everybody to, or support the CSPOA. That's Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, or CSPOA.org. Anybody who can jump on there and learn more about their program and participate in it, they are a great group and great organization.
So I'm doing my part to contact people in Missouri and outside of Missouri about this issue of the Second Amendment Preservation Act, because I see it as a breakthrough potential for nullification. If we can start the nullification idea in one area, we might be able to open the door for nullification of other federal laws and make the public aware that the federal government is going beyond their jurisdiction. The federal government was born of the several states, not the other way around. The federal government is the child, and the several states are supposed to stand up and keep the federal government in check, but they're not doing that. They're allowing themselves to be compromised, local authorities compromised, and therefore, therein, local citizens are compromised, wherein they can come in and take your property. It's absolutely horrible.
Yeah. Well, there's no denying it that the federal government has, usurped for all intents and purposes the sovereignty of the states, and the 10th Amendment is, almost effectively dead. In fact, the 10th Amendment Center came out the other day and said that the Second Amendment Preservation Act being proposed in Missouri is the strongest in the nation. And so it's really important that we get it, that we get it resolved and get it passed.
Well, thanks, Mike. I just wanted to share that, and thank you for responding to my email about the NRA and clarifying it for me, because I wasn't clear about this added wording, which, by the way, I wanted to bring that up to you. I'm wondering why the state senators allowed that wording to be added by some liberal from St. Louis. I don't get that. It's like they're allowing the original intent to be watered down. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I don't know, and I made some phone calls on it yesterday, but I wasn't able to get a hold of the senator that I was trying to reach to get some answers. And so I can't really answer as to how that amendment made its way in there. I'm not sure, and I don't know enough about the process of whether or not it has to stay or they can knock it out or whatever the case may be. But it is important that, that get knocked out of there, because we definitely don't want that.
Well, I'll do what I can. I've also tried to call the senators and also Funderburk, the representative, to find out what he had to say. But both their lines were busy forever, so I'm sure others are calling about it, wondering what's going on. So
sure, maybe
if more people get involved and make calls and ask questions, that they'll get with it.
Okay. Well, thank you very
much. So thank you, Mike. I won't take any more time. I appreciate it. I'm going to listen in.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much. So, folks, that was Mark from the Philadelphia region, and he's a Missourian from birth, and but currently lives out there, and I hear from him from time to time. He's an active, and I'll tell you what, I got to give Mark credit. He is the guy. He's the guy who picks up the telephone and calls every sheriff in every county. I mean, he's really he's a hard charger. The issue with the Second Amendment preservation thing is that the 10th Amendment Center came out and said that Senate Bill 613 is, quote, the bill is the strongest nullification bill in modern times by leaps and bounds. And that was from them. The Gun Owners of America and Larry Pratt, who is a friend of mine, and you know him, you've heard him on our show before, he's endorsed the Second Amendment Preservation Act. But the NRA, sent out a letter that, an alert, I should say, to their constituents that said that there was a thing in the bill that said, upon becoming aware that a firearm has been stolen, a person has 72 hours to report the theft, and that they can be charged and fined $1,000 and all of that nonsense. Well, that's not true. And so they were encouraging people to call up their sponsors and their senators and tell them not to support the bill. Well, that's a mistake. First of all, there is no $1,000 fine. There's no misdemeanor, and there's no loss of their right to carry or a loss of their right to carry permit. So I don't know where the NRA is getting that information, but they should have done their homework and researched it, and they could have read the bill themselves and seen it wasn't in there. But instead, they went and shot themselves and all of us in the foot by going out there and... Now, how many members of the NRA picked up the phone and called their senator and told them not to support it? I don't know. But that's the last thing we need, is the NRA working against the strongest Second Amendment nullification bill in modern times. The heck is going on with that? All right. Let me just get back on track here. By the way, what I was talking about before the break was, and Doreen and I were talking about with the cattle thing. I got a friend of mine, Dan Collins, who runs a place called the Heritage Hills Farm. You can find his website by going to theheritagehills.com. He also has a website called survivalbypreparedness.com. And one of the things that Dan does is he's got natural grass-fed beef and lamb out there. So if you're interested, if you're in the Missouri area and you'd like to purchase that, you can give him a call. It's survivalbypreparedness.com, and the farm site itself is theheritagehills.com. His phone number, if you need to reach him, is 417-231-4902. That's 417-231-4902. Give Dan a call if you're interested in healthy grass-fed beef, and I think you'll be surprised. The issue of what not only what is healthy for us, but also what is cost-effective for us. A lot of times, if you can find, and if you're not directly in this area, a lot of times if you can find someone who is growing their own food right in their own backyard, as an example, or is got a small farm and they butcher their own cattle, their own pigs, their own sheep, or whatever, you can actually get high quality meats for much less than you would pay in a store. And at the same point in time, generally, because these smaller family farmers are eating what they're growing, they know what's in that, and they're not filling it up with all kinds of chemicals and hormones and antibiotics and things like that. So I would encourage you to find a local farmer in your community who you can buy your groceries from, if at all possible. And I know that there's a lot of folks around the country who listen to this program, and you're not in our area. So, it doesn't really matter where you are, though. And unless you're buried deep in a big city somewhere, and even if you are, you might be able to simply find somebody who's on the outskirts or out in the suburbs or just outside the suburbs where there's some farm areas. And I would make friends with those folks. Start to cycle yourself around and find out where you can buy locally grown and locally harvested food right in your own backyard. One reason for that is that you know what's in it, but more importantly, if we do get to a point where things start to unwind here in the United States, whether that's fiscally or anything else, remember that relationship that you've developed and built with a local food source is or will become invaluable to you, because it may be the only source that you have. So I would encourage you to do that, and do what you can to prepare yourselves and your families today. As Doreen was mentioning, you should have at least a 90-day window in which you are self-sufficient. So, all right, before we wrap for the day, there was one of the things that we were talking about, or I wanted to talk about here, was that this issue of what's going on with this Iranian conflict and the nuclear deal here. And I got to tell you, I'm incensed that here we are again talking about another senator. Another representative has got to come out and demand that the President Obama release the text of the Iran's nuclear agreement, the nuclear deal they cut with Iran. What is up with this damn fool in the White House? I got to tell you, folks, I'm tired of hearing everything is a secret. Who is he to subject the entire nation and frankly the entire world to this deal without all of us knowing what it's about? This deal affects all of us. It affects our nation, and it affects the entire planet. It's the culmination of 2 decades of negotiation by not just his administration, but previous administrations before him. And honestly, it releases assets that have been frozen since the days of the Shah in the 1970s. And we're releasing literally billions and billions of dollars back into their economy, which kills the whole point of all of the sanctions that were done for all those years. It normalizes, relations with Iran. And in addition to that, it authorizes Iran to continue to produce nuclear material. And that's not just against the United States law. That's in contravention of of international law. Who the heck is Obama to make a unilateral deal? I don't like it. And what really burns me up about it is it's not just this. It's that it's a secret. Did you know that Congress hasn't been able to see the text of this deal? Explain that to me. Give me some justification. Why is it that the TTIP, and the TPP treaties are all negotiated in secret and Congress isn't allowed to see them? Why do we have to rely on people to sneak out copies of drafts of chapters so we can find out what's in these deals? Why is it? And then you get a guy like Snowden who comes out and spills the beans on all of the sneaky dirt that they're doing, and suddenly he's a traitor. Ladies and gentlemen, anytime a government wants to keep this level of secretive activity going on, they're up to no good. Secrets only benefit tyrants. And that's the simple truth. And it's time that it stopped. We shouldn't have to beg the president to release the text of an agreement that holds the United States and other countries, for all intents and purposes, into a deal which we don't even know the terms of. And on top of that, now we're curbing our presence in the Persian Gulf by our warships, by removing them out of the Persian Gulf in order to enhance the talks that we're in with Iran. Why are we bowing and scraping to these people? Why is it that our noses are bloody on the tip because we are down on our knees before the Iranians and their desire to obtain and have nuclear weapons? I don't get it. What is the value of this deal to this nation? What's the value of this agreement that enables Iran to continue to produce nuclear material in contravention of not U.S. law, but international law? You know, there's non-proliferation agreements that are out there. And I'm not saying Iran doesn't have rights within their own sovereign nation. They do. But they're also out there producing and developing long-range missiles, as I mentioned the other day. What do you think they're going to use those with? Well, who do you think they're going to use them against? They're already announcing that and that they can hit military bases in the Middle East. And on top of that, their officials, their government officials, including their international, I can't think of the right word, but like their Department of State, we're a laughing stock. They're going around to the world press saying, those idiot Americans, we can do whatever we want. They've bowed to us. Ladies and gentlemen, there is something desperately wrong when this country has, for all intents and purposes, abdicated and walked away from all of the years and years and years of work that has been done to make this into a superpower, and literally within a 10-year or a 15-year period in between Bush Senior or Bush Jr. and Obama, we've thrown our entire nation to the dogs. We've tossed it all away. They've given away our and before that, Clinton, and before that, Bush Senior. You know what? I'm tired of presidents who betray our best interests. I'm tired of presidents who give our jobs away to foreign nations. I'm tired of presidents who have loaded us up with so much debt we can't see over the top of the pile and we'll never be able to pay it off. I'm tired of presidents and Congresses who are willing to sacrifice us for the benefit of their own personal gain and to enrich their cronies and line the pockets of themselves and their friends. I've had it. I really have. You know, this game of politics is an old game. It's been going on for as long as human beings have been alive. But when you got people who are actively out there betraying their country, we've reached the end of what we should be willing to tolerate and accept. And it's inexcusable. You know, there's some steps out there that we can take, but frankly, we need to approach this with from every angle simultaneously. We can't just rely on one methodology. I mean, you know, I love the concept of Article 5 and the idea of being able to go out and develop these constitutional changes that will force the government to live within its restrictions by the Constitution. But I'm not sure that we have the time to accomplish that. By their own estimates, under the Convention of the States group, that maybe 2018 before we actually can get one in. I don't think we have until 2018, guys. Not at the rate we're going. Not at the pace these people are racing us to the edge of the cliff. I mean, frankly, you know, we've actually gone over the cliff already. Now we're just waiting to hit the ground. We're waiting for the sudden stop. And I don't really think that we can continue to ignore how the direction we're headed. This president is clearly and obviously operating outside the boundaries of the Constitution. Shows no sign of having any interest whatsoever in stopping. And frankly, I'm just I don't think we should be willing to tolerate it anymore. You know, the idea of all of these do-gooders and you know, Mencken said it best, right? The people who are out there and are pitching to show us the wisdom of their ways, it's always really just a front for people who want to rule. And I'm tired of megalomaniacs, and everybody seems to be one. Whether nowadays it's not even just down to, it's not even, you know, on a national scale. It's down to your local city councils and your local mayors and all of that. What is wrong with people? All right, we're gonna wrap for the day. TGIF, guys, I apologize. This has been a very, very difficult show technologically, and when I get scrambled like that, I lose my train of thought. And so if this sounded scattered to you, I apologize. I'll try to get that phone issue worked out and resolved. I'm not sure what it needs. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Please make sure that you support and patronize our sponsors. They're the ones who keep us on the air. And by all means, you can reach them by going to going to batterystation.com. Kevin's a great guy and does great work out there. You can reach him at 417-257-7799. Our friends at Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard, where you can go in there and have a great lunch every day. And then on Tuesday night, kids eat free. It's family night. Tuesdays and Thursdays is $5 lunch days. Make sure that you take advantage of that. Our friends over at Express Mini Mart 1 and 2. Express Mini Mart 1 is right across the street from the People's Park in the city of West Plains on Porter Wagoner Boulevard, where the city pool is located. You can right across the street. You can see they've got a big flashing sign out there. They have a drive-through around the back, so if you don't want to get out of your car, you're good. And they carry the lowest prices on discount tobacco products, and they have the cheapest fountain drinks you're going to find anywhere. I think a 16-ounce fountain drink is 39 cents. I mean, you can't get that even if you go and buy a can of soda. I mean, that's cheaper than a can of soda, and it's 16 ounces. Their other location is up on the corner of 14 and 63, and you're welcome to go over there and use the drive-thru at that location as well. Make sure that you see our friends over at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop at 417-257-1776. That's 417-257-1776. The Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop has a real... I mean, I swung in there yesterday to go talk to Sam, the owner there. I'm telling you, he's got so many cigars in there. Probably, 100 different variants of cigars, and he's got all kinds of, custom and like these sophisticated tobaccos in there for pipes and things like that. So make sure that you swing in and see those guys. 257-1776. Woods End Classic Barbershop, 417-372-2027 if you want to call them. Wits End Classic Barbershop does a great job on cutting your hair. They cut mine every week for about $10, and you won't be disappointed going there. If you'd like to contact me, you can do so at mike@americasvoicenow.org. Thank God it's Friday. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.